Hey, it's JJ Como with In Country Music We Trust. Today we have a special guest, Mr. Fred Vail, legendary Beach Boys manager, producer, and Treasure Isle owner. Fred, thank you for being with us today.
Always enjoy it, JJ.
Fred, Nashville, how did Nashville become Music City, USA?
That's an excellent question. Before Nashville became USA, or Music City, USA, most of the recording was done either in New York, which is where the radio networks were located. Broadway was located there. The Metropolitan Opera was located there. A lot of it was done in LA, which is where the film industry was located, Hollywood, Los Angeles. But there were regional studios. Atlanta had studios. Dallas had studios. San Antonio had studios. Chicago had studios. Camden, New Jersey had studios. And that's where the earlier recordings were done. So in 1927, Ralph Peer, a music publisher, and he worked for the Bluebird Recording Company, which became ultimately RCA Victor, came in with a portable studio. He set up in an old warehouse, and he recorded, I think he recorded about 70 sides or tracks over a period of 5 days in August of 1927. Amongst the people that he recorded were Pop Stoneman and the Stoneman Family, which were a mountain band, a traditional music band. Obviously, the Carter family, A.P. Carter, Sarah, and May Bell, who would become the mother-in-law of Johnny Cash, the mother of June Carter, and of course Jimmy Rogers, who's considered the father of country music. All those artists, along with other artists from the West Virginia, North Carolina area, converged on this little makeshift studio in state line. It was actually recorded on the state line of Virginia and Tennessee in Bristol. And they were called the Bristol Sessions. That's what the name was. They were called the Bristol Sessions. Years later, Johnny Cash would call the Bristol Sessions the Big Bang of country music. That's where it all started.
Wow.
And that was only, 3 or 4 hours east of here, northeast of here. So Nashville did not have a studio. We were latecomers. Nashville did not get a recording studio, a dedicated studio, until around 1946. Some earlier recordings in 1944 and 45 were actually recorded at the WSM radio studios, or they would record them on the stage of the Ryman Auditorium. But we didn't actually get a recording studio, a dedicated studio, until 1946, which was 70 years after Thomas Alva Edison invented the phonograph. It was 70 years. And it was 20 plus years after the Grand Ole Opry made its debut. So the Grand Ole Opry made its debut in November of 1925. It would ultimately move to the Ryman Auditorium in 1946, and it would be there until 1974. But in the meantime, the Grand Ole Opry as a program pretty much started to put Nashville on the map. It was a regional program. It featured a lot of regional talent, fiddle players, comedians, groups, bands, makeshift type of things, and it hit a chord with the people. It was a fun program. And it was also the debut of WSM Radio, which was the beginning of the radio stations here in Nashville, Tennessee. So basically, 1925 Grand Ole Opry, 1946, the Castle Recording Company sets up in the ballroom of a hotel, the Tulane Hotel in downtown Nashville. Long gone, it's now a parking lot, unfortunately, along with 2 or 3 other major studios that are parking lots or office buildings that were torn down to make way for progress. So we're losing our history, every day, every year, we lose part of our history because they're not thinking about saving these things that are such important, parts of our history. So here we are in Nashville. It's the 1940s. Hank Williams is recording here starting around 1946, 1947. Harold and Owen Bradley are here in the early days of their careers, and ultimately they would purchase a house on 16th Avenue South, and they would add a Quonset hut, an Army Quonset hut, to the rear of that house to expand the space of the studio. The house had a studio in it, and they recorded some great artists in the house, but they outgrew the house. They wanted a bigger tracking room, so they bought an Army Quonset hut. They put it on the rear, and that became the Quonset hut. And that all started around 1955. They kept it until 1962 when they sold it to CBS, or Columbia Records. And it's still there today. You can still go in it. It's no longer a flourishing studio like it was in the 50s, 60s, 70s, and 80s, but it's a piece of history. That really, along with RCA Studio B, which came along in 1957, put Nashville on the map as a recording mecca. There's another famous studio that fits into the equation, and that was the famous Trafco studio, owned by the Methodist Sunday School Board. And that was on McGavick Street, which was just a block south of Broadway, and they set up a studio. And in that studio, on January 10th of 1956, a young guy from Memphis named Elvis Presley recorded a song by Maybor and Axton called Heartbreak Hotel.
Wow.
And that song really lifted the stature of Nashville as a recording mecca. It went #1 worldwide. It was one of the first gold records to come out of Nashville. Not the first, but one of the first. And it was Elvis's first #1. That was the important thing. He had made some great records at Sun Studios in Memphis, but none of them charted to any substantial degree. He was more country rockabilly then, less rock and roll. They saw a life. They had some success, enough for Steve Scholz to sign him to RCA Victor Records. But it wasn't until Heartbreak Hotel, January 10th, 1956, that really launched Elvis, launched the Nashville recording community into what ultimately became Music City, USA.